Marcus Everett sat in a stifling Atlanta courtroom, wrists cuffed, as three smug cops sneered from the witness stand, whispering slurs and chuckling. The judge, exasperated, demanded his identity. Marcus rose, voice calm, and declared he was the FBI director, probing their corruption. The cops' laughter choked, their faces blanched. The judge's gavel slammed, ordering their arrest. As Marcus exited, a shadowy figure slipped away, clutching a phone. His revelation ignited a firestorm that could consume him. What would Crane's next move be? Before diving into this story, share where you're watching from and if you stand. For justice, hit like and subscribe because tomorrow's episode is one you can't miss. Stay tuned for the fight of Marcus's life. 6 months before the courtroom stunner, Marcus Everett crouched under the hood of a beat-up sedan in a dusty Atlanta auto shop, his grease-stained overalls masking his true identity as FBI director. At 42, with a chiseled jaw and eyes. That missed nothing. He played the role of a quiet mechanic to perfection, blending into the city's southwest side where black families hustled to survive. His mission was to dismantle a festering wound in Atlanta's police force, a corrupt ring led by Lieutenant Victor Crane, a barrel-chested cop with a buzz cut and a smirk that screamed untouchable. Crane's crew didn't just bend the law, they shattered it, framing black men for crimes they didn't commit, pocketing bribes from drug lords and terrorizing neighborhoods with badge-backed brutality. Marcus had spent weeks earning the trust of locals, swapping stories over coffee at Miss Ruby's diner, where the air smelled of fried chicken and hope. He listened to tales of sons dragged off in cuffs for looking suspicious, and daughters harassed at bus stops by Crane's patrols, their leers dripping with racial venom. Every night, Marcus slipped into abandoned lots, planting tiny audio bugs in precinct backrooms, his heart pounding as flashlights swept nearby. The recordings were gold, Crane's gravelly voice boasting about planting coke on a preacher, laughing as he split the cash with his squad. "Ain't no black boy gonna talk?" Crane sneered in one clip, the words burning Marcus's ears as he transcribed them in a dim motel room. He sent encrypted files to his FBI team, building a case to bury Crane's empire. But trust was a fragile thing in Atlanta, and Marcus's cover wasn't airtight. A mole, some cop with Crane's ear, caught wind of an outsider asking too many questions. The betrayal came fast. On a humid Saturday, the neighborhood threw a barbecue in Carver Park, the air thick with charcoal smoke and laughter. Kids darted through sprinklers, their squeals mixing with Marvin Gaye's voice from a boombox. Marcus flipped burgers, joking with old man Clarence about the Braves' losing streak, his guard down for a moment. Then tires screeched. 4 squad. Cars roared into the park, lights flashing, sirens splitting the joy like a blade. Crane led the charge, his boots crunching gravel, a baton swinging in his meaty fist. "Drug bust!" he bellowed, though no one believed it. Cops swarmed, shoving elders to the ground, zip-tying teens who dared protest. Marcus tried to slip away, but Crane's eyes locked onto him, a predator spotting prey. "You!" Crane growled, storming over. "Heard you're new around here." Before Marcus could speak, a fist slammed into his gut, doubling him over. The crowd gasped, phones raised, but Crane's men snatched them, smashing screens under boots. Marcus's vision blurred as a knee cracked his jaw, blood spilling onto the grass. "Plant it," Crane muttered, and a baggie of white powder appeared in Marcus's pocket, shoved there by a sneering officer. Kids wailed. Mothers screamed. Miss Ruby, 68 and fearless, swung her cane at a cop only to be cuffed herself. Marcus, head spinning, caught Crane's grin as the lieutenant leaned close, breath sour with chewing tobacco. "You think you're slick, boy? This is my city." The word boy hit harder than the blows, a whip of history cracking across Marcus's pride. Handcuffs bit his wrists, cold and tight, as cops dragged him to a cruiser. The park, moments ago alive with community, was now a war zone, littered with spilled food and broken trust. In the squad car, Marcus's cheek pressed against grimy glass, he heard Crane radio the precinct, chuckling. "Got another one for the books. Drug runner caught red-handed." The lie was seamless, built on years of practice. Marcus's bugs were still out there recording, but his cover was blown, his mission teetering. The precinct lockup awaited, a concrete box where Crane's men could work him over without cameras. Blood dripped from his lip, staining his shirt, but Marcus's mind stayed sharp. He'd known the risks, known the hate he'd face as a black man challenging a system rigged to crush him. His wife Lena and son Jaden flashed in his thoughts, their faces steeling his resolve. Crane thought this arrest was checkmate, but Marcus was playing a longer game. The recordings, if they held, could spark a fire. But as the cruiser sped through Atlanta's streets, past murals of MLK fading on brick walls, Marcus felt the weight of Crane's power. This wasn't just one bad cop. It was a machine oiled with racism and greed, and Marcus had just stepped into its gears. The barbecue's laughter was gone, replaced by the clank of cell bars in his future. His jaw throbbed, his ribs ached, but his eyes burned with defiance. Crane's men might laugh now, slapping backs as they booked him, but Marcus Everett was no ordinary man. He was the FBI director, and this raid, this beating, was just the opening move in a war Crane didn't see coming. Marcus Everett stepped out of the Atlanta precinct into a muggy dawn, his wrists raw from cuffs that no longer bound him, the taste of blood still lingering from the barbecue raid. His FBI team had moved like lightning, pulling strings to force. Held judge to toss the trumped-up drug charge Crane's crew had pinned on him. At 42, Marcus stood tall, his dark eyes scanning the street, calm but wary, knowing freedom was a fragile thing in a city where Lieutenant Victor Crane's shadow loomed. The judge's ruling felt like a win, a rare crack in the wall of corruption he'd sworn to topple. Back at the precinct, Crane's men had snarled as Marcus walked free, their slurs bouncing off the walls, but they couldn't touch him now. Or so he thought. He drove home in his beat-up Chevy, the same one he'd used undercover as a mechanic, the engine's hum a faint comfort against the chaos. His wife, Lena, waited at their modest brick house in Vine City, her arms folding him into a hug that smelled of lavender and worry. Their 16-year-old son, Jaden, hovered nearby, his usual grin replaced by a scowl, the raid's violence. Still fresh in his mind, Marcus wanted to savor this moment, to believe he'd outmaneuvered Crane and could refocus on the recordings that could bury the lieutenant's empire. But Crane wasn't the type to slink away. By noon, Marcus's phone buzzed with a blocked number, a text flashing across the screen. "Lena looks pretty today. Be a shame if she didn't make it home." His stomach twisted, the words a blade aimed at his heart. Another text followed. "Jaden's at basketball practice, right? Kids are so fragile." Marcus's hands shook, not from fear, but from a fury that burned hotter than Atlanta's summer asphalt. He checked the locks, called Lena to stay put, and told Jaden to skip practice. That evening, he stepped outside to grab the mail and froze. Across his garage door in jagged red spray paint, the word traitor screamed against the faded wood, the paint still dripping like blood. The racial undertone wasn't subtle. Crane's cops had called him worse during the raid, their voices thick with hate for a black man daring to challenge their power. Marcus clenched his fists, his knuckles tight, knowing this was no idle vandalism. Crane was sending a message. No badge, no court ruling could shield Marcus from his reach. Lena's face paled when she saw the graffiti, her voice trembling. As she asked if they should leave town, Marcus shook his head. Running wasn't his style. He installed cameras, hired a private security guy, a burly ex-Marine named Ty, to watch the house. But Crane's harassment didn't stop. The next day, Marcus was pulled over 3 times within 2 miles, each stop a ritual of humiliation. "Broken tail light," one cop sneered, though the light was fine. "You look like trouble," another said, his hand on his holster, eyes daring Marcus to flinch. Slurs slipped out, low and casual, meant to cut deeper than any ticket. Marcus stayed composed, his voice steady, giving them nothing to twist. But the weight of their badges, their untouchable smirks, pressed harder than the cuffs ever had. He couldn't drive to the grocery store without a cruiser tailing him, its lights flashing in his rearview like a predator's eyes. Nights grew restless, sleep fractured by every creak in the house. Lena stopped smiling. Jaden stopped talking. Then, at 2 in the morning, a crash shattered the silence. Marcus bolted upright, grabbing the Glock he kept under the bed. Glass littered the living room floor. A brick lying among the shards, a note tied to it with twine. His hands steadied as he unfolded it, the words scrawled in black ink. "Resign or they die." No signature, but Crane's stench was all over it. Marcus's pulse hammered, not for himself, but for Lena and Jayden, sleeping just down the hall. He swept the glass, taped cardboard over the window, and sat in the dark, staring at the note. The precinct was Crane's fortress, the streets his playground. Marcus had walked free, but freedom was a lie when a racist cop could paint your house, stalk your family, and threaten their lives with a flick of his wrist. The recordings, still hidden in an encrypted cloud, were his ace, but using them now risked exposing his sources, his allies. Crane knew Marcus was FBI. The texts proved it. This wasn't just about the drug frame anymore, it was personal, a vendetta carved in racial hate. Marcus had spent years climbing to FBI director, a black man at the top of a system that rarely let men like him breathe. He'd faced slurs, side-eyes, and sabotage, but Crane was different. The lieutenant didn't just want Marcus gone, he wanted him broken, his family in ruins, his legacy ash. The spray paint, the stops, the brick, they were warnings, each one a promise of worse to come. Marcus glanced at a photo on the mantel, him and Lena laughing at Jayden's middle school graduation, her arm around his shoulders. That life felt a million miles away now. He'd beaten the charge, walked out of Crane's trap, but the lieutenant's claws were sinking deeper, tearing at what Marcus loved most. The morning sun rose, painting the graffiti in stark relief. Marcus stood at the window, his silhouette, sharp against the light, knowing he had to strike back. But Crane's next move was already in motion, a shadow creeping closer. If you're raging at Crane's cruelty, drop a 1 in the comments, smash that like button, and subscribe to see this fight explode. How far would Crane go to destroy Marcus's family? Marcus Everett sat in the dim glow of a borrowed laptop, his fingers hovering over the keyboard, in a cramped attic hideout, the air thick with the scent of dust and desperation. The threats against Lena and Jayden, the traitor scrawled on his garage, the brick through his window, all fueled a fire in his gut that no cop's sneer could douse. At 42, Marcus, still the FBI director, despite Crane's claws tightening around his life, knew he had to hit back hard. The recordings from his undercover days as a mechanic, capturing Lieutenant Victor Crane's boasts of framing black men for profit, were his weapon. He'd held off using them, protecting his sources, but the note threatening his family's lives changed the game. Marcus encrypted the audio, a chilling clip of Crane laughing about planting drugs on a preacher, and sent it to Carla Hayes, a bulldog reporter at the Atlanta Chronicle with a nose for corruption. Carla's eyes lit up when she heard it, promising a front-page expose that would torch Crane's career. By noon, the story broke, a wildfire racing across news feeds. Atlanta cop brags about framing innocents. Social media erupted, hashtags like Gilbert Crane must fall trending as protesters clogged Peachtree Street, their signs demanding justice. Marcus watched from the attic, a rare smile breaking through his guarded face, as TV anchors replayed the clip, Crane's gravelly voice damning him. The mayor, sweating under camera lights, announced Crane's suspension pending investigation, his words clipped with panic. Marcus leaned back, the creak of the attic floorboards echoing his relief. Crane's badge was clipped, his squad scrambling, their fortress cracking. For a moment, Marcus felt the scales tip, his months of dodging slurs and fists as an undercover, mechanic paying off. He pictured Lena's face softening, Jayden's scowl fading, their home free of spray paint and fear. But Victor Crane wasn't a man who bowed to headlines. The lieutenant, holed up in his suburban McMansion, his buzz cut glinting under a desk lamp, wasn't licking wounds. He was plotting. Crane had allies, dirty feds who owed him favors, and a knack for turning traps into weapons. While Marcus savored his win, Crane dug into the FBI's underbelly, forging documents that painted Marcus as a traitor. He planted fake emails, time-stamped to look legit, claiming Marcus had stolen classified evidence to sabotage the Atlanta PD. The lie was audacious, a masterstroke of malice, exploiting every stereotype of a black man in power as corrupt, untrustworthy, a threat. Crane fed the file to a federal prosecutor he'd bribed years ago, a man with a yacht and a guilty conscience. The trap snapped shut at dawn. Marcus was brewing coffee, the attic's stale air mixing with the scent of grounds, when tires screeched outside. Federal agents, not Crane's goons but Marcus's own colleagues, stormed the house, their shouts slicing through the quiet. Lena screamed as boots thudded, Jaden's eyes wide with terror. Marcus raised his hands, voice steady, but the lead agent, a stone-faced woman named Kessler, slapped cuffs on him, her gaze cold. "You're under arrest for theft of classified materials," she barked, reading rights he knew by heart. The raid was surgical, agents tearing through drawers, seizing his laptop, while Lena clutched Jaden, her sobs muffled. Marcus's heart sank, not for the cuffs but for the betrayal in his son's stare. The boy who'd already seen too much. Dragged to a black SUV, Marcus caught a glimpse of his neighbors, black families like his, watching from porches, their faces a mix of fear and resignation. The system didn't spare its own, not when a black man rose too high. Hours later, at a federal holding cell, Marcus learned the depth of Crane's revenge. The fake emails, leaked to the press, branded him a rogue agent, a disgrace who'd betrayed the FBI to frame honest cops. Cable news ran wild, pundits spitting venom. Everett's a fraud, a race baiter tearing down law enforcement. The racial subtext wasn't subtle. Every headline, a dog whistle painting Marcus as the dangerous black man America loved to hate. Crane, reinstated by a panicked precinct desperate to save face, held a press conference, his tie crisp, his smirk barely hidden. "Marcus Everett is a disgrace to law enforcement," he said, the cameras eating it up. "He thought he could ruin me, but justice prevails." The words were a knife, twisting in Marcus's chest as he sat in a cell, his badge revoked by an FBI brass too spooked to question the evidence. The suspension had been Marcus's victory, Crane's humiliation, but the lieutenant had flipped the board, turning Marcus's own agency against him. Stripped of his title, his gun, his power, Marcus was no longer the director, just a man in a jumpsuit, his name smeared across every screen in Atlanta. The cell's concrete walls closed in, the air sour with sweat and bleach. He thought of Lena's trembling hands, Jaden's accusing eyes, the traitor on his garage. Crane hadn't just framed him. He'd weaponized the system Marcus had spent decades navigating, a system that never fully trusted a black man at the top. The recordings were still out there, but without his badge, Marcus was exposed, a target with no shield. Crane's voice echoed in his mind, that smug chuckle, from the barbecue raid, now amplified by a city turned against him. Marcus's fists tightened, his knuckles brushing the cold bench. He'd clawed his way to the FBI's peak, faced down racists in suits and uniforms, but this was different. Crane wasn't just a cop. He was a symbol of a machine that crushed black men for daring to fight. The cell door clanged, a guard barking for lights out. Marcus lay back, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. He'd lost his badge, his name, but not his will. Crane thought this frame-up was the end. But Marcus Everett wasn't done. The war was just getting started. Marcus Everett crouched in the flickering shadows of a roach-infested motel room on Atlanta's outskirts, the neon sign outside buzzing like a dying wasp, casting jagged red light across his clenched jaw. At 42, stripped of his FBI badge, his name smeared as a traitor, Marcus was a ghost, no longer the director but a hunted man, his life unraveling under Lieutenant Victor Crane's relentless hate. The frame-up that cost him his career, painting him as a thief of classified files, had turned Atlanta's streets into a gauntlet, every corner hiding eyes loyal to Crane's corrupt empire. Lena and Jaden, his wife and son, were safe for now, hidden in a safe house 200 miles away, their faces haunting Marcus as he sat on a sagging mattress, the air thick with mildew and fear. He'd sent them away after Crane's threats, the traitor graffiti, the brick through their window, each act a blade carving deeper into his resolve. But Marcus wasn't running. He was digging, clawing through Crane's filth to find the rot at its core. His laptop, a battered relic from his undercover days, glowed with encrypted files he'd salvaged before the feds raided his home. He hacked into financial records, his fingers flying, tracing Crane's dirty money. The trail led to a white supremacist group, the Sons of Liberty, a shadowy militia bankrolling Crane's frame-ups with cash from illegal arms deals. The discovery burned in Marcus's chest, confirmation that Crane's racism wasn't just personal, but a cog in a larger, uglier machine. He documented every transaction, every coded email, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights, knowing one wrong move could end him. The motel, a crumbling dive off Interstate 85, was his last refuge, chosen for its anonymity, the kind of place where no one asked questions. But Crane's reach was long, his mole in the FBI feeding him Marcus's every step. On a moonless night, as Marcus typed, tires crunched outside, too deliberate for a random guest. His pulse spiked, instincts honed from years of fieldwork kicking in. He grabbed his Glock, the weight familiar but heavier now, a civilian's weapon, not a director's. Peering through the grimy curtain, he saw three figures, silhouettes of Crane's cops, their radios crackling. They didn't knock. They staged. A robbery, kicking the door in, guns drawn, shouting for him to freeze. Marcus dove behind the bed, bullets shredding the wall, plaster dust choking the air. His heart thundered, not for himself, but for Lena and Jayden, who'd lose everything if he fell here. He returned fire, the Glock's recoil jarring his arm, one shot clipping a cop's shoulder. The others ducked, cursing, giving Marcus a split. Second to bolt through the bathroom window, glass slicing his palm as he landed in the alley. He sprinted, legs burning as sirens wailed closer. Behind him, flames erupted, the motel room exploding in a fireball that lit the night orange. Crane's men had torched it, erasing any trace of Marcus's work. He stumbled into a ditch, mud, soaking his jeans, and glanced back. The motel was a pyre, and scrawled in black paint across the office wall, visible even from 100 yards, was the word coon, a racial dagger meant to gut him. Marcus's breath hitched, rage and pain colliding. A bystander, some kid with a phone, filmed the blaze, the video hitting the internet within hours, branding Marcus a fugitive, a dangerous black man fleeing justice. The news ate it up, anchors speculating he'd set the fire himself, their words dripping with the same venom Crane wielded. Marcus limped through back streets, his clothes torn, blood dripping from his hand, the Glock tucked in his waistband. The supremacist link was his only leverage, but the laptop was ash, his evidence scattered in the motel's ruins. Crane had turned a simple frame-up into a death sentence, his cops now hunting Marcus with shoot-first orders. The city, once his home, was a trap, every billboard, every news ticker screaming his name as a criminal. He thought of Lena's last call, her voice cracking, begging him to come to the safe house. Jayden hadn't spoken, his silence louder than any slur. Marcus had exposed Crane's boasts, gotten him suspended, but the lieutenant's retaliation was a beast, swallowing Marcus's life whole. The Sons of Liberty's money meant Crane wasn't alone. He had an army, one that saw Marcus's black skin as a target, his defiance as a crime. He ducked into a storm drain, the damp concrete, cold against his back, his breath ragged. The recordings were gone, but the truth wasn't. Marcus Everett had faced racists before, climbed over their walls to lead the FBI, but this was a war, not a battle. Crane thought fire and bullets could break him, thought a slur could erase him. But Marcus's eyes burned brighter than the motel's flames, his mind already plotting the next move. He'd find another way, another source, because stopping meant letting Crane win, letting the system that propped him up keep crushing black lives. The drain's darkness swallowed him, but Marcus wasn't lost. He was a spark. And Crane's empire was tinder. If you're furious at Crane's racist ambush, comment 1 to stand with Marcus, hit like to fuel this fight, and subscribe to see justice burn. Could Marcus uncover Crane's supremacist allies before they hunted him down? Marcus Everett crouched in the shadows of an abandoned Atlanta warehouse, the air heavy with rust and rot, his breath shallow as he nursed the cut on his palm from the motel ambush. At 42, a fugitive with no badge, no home, Marcus was a phantom, dodging Lieutenant Victor Crane's hunters after the fire that devoured his evidence and branded him a criminal. The coon scrawled on the motel wall still seared his mind, a racist taunt that fueled his resolve to expose Crane's ties to the Sons of Liberty, the white supremacist group bankrolling the lieutenant's corruption. His laptop was ash. His family hidden in a safe house, but Marcus wasn't broken. Late at night, as rain battered the warehouse's cracked roof, his burner phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "I know you're innocent. Meet me, I have proof." His pulse quickened, suspicion warring with hope. The sender was Officer Tanya Brooks, a black cop in Crane's precinct, 31, with a sharp gaze and a reputation for playing by the book. Marcus had seen her at the barbecue raid, her eyes flickering with disgust as Crane's men beat him. Against his better judgment, he agreed to meet at a shuttered diner off Moreland Avenue, the kind of place where the neon was dead and the windows boarded. Under a flickering streetlight, Tanya slipped him a USB drive, her hands steady but her voice low. "Bank records," she whispered. "Crane's been funneling Sons of Liberty cash through shell companies. It's enough to bury him." Marcus's fingers closed around the drive, a lifeline in a storm. Tanya's proof was a goldmine. Transactions linking Crane to militia arms deals, names of dirty cops on the take, even a coded email mentioning keeping Atlanta pure. For the first time since the frame-up stole his badge, Marcus felt a deepest spark of victory. He thanked Tanya, promising to protect her, and slipped back into the night, his mind racing. The plan was bold. Leak the records to Carla Hayes, the reporter who'd broken Crane's boasts, and expose the supremacist network at a city council meeting where cameras would make it undeniable. Marcus holed up in a basement safehouse, or place damp hole lent by a sympathetic ex-FBI contact, and sent the files to Carla. She was electric, drafting a bombshell story that would name Crane and his militia backers, scheduling it to drop hours before the meeting. Marcus allowed himself a moment to breathe, picturing Crane's empire crumbling. Lena and Jaden safe, the traitor graffiti erased from his life. He imagined Tanya, risking everything, standing tall when the truth hit. But Crane wasn't. A man who missed whispers. The lieutenant, his buzz cut glinting in a precinct backroom, had eyes everywhere, a mole who'd sniffed out Tanya's betrayal. While Marcus planned, Crane struck. The night before the council meeting, Marcus's burner buzzed again, this time with a video. His stomach plummeted as Tanya's face filled the screen, her lip bloodied, hands bound, a gag muffling her pleas. Her gloved hand held a knife to her throat, and a voice unmistakably Crane's growled, "Back off, Everett, or she's dead." The video cut to black, leaving Marcus's hands trembling, rage and guilt crashing like waves. He replayed it, searching for clues, but the message was clear. Crane knew about the leak. Hours later, Carla called, her voice shaking. Her office had been ransacked, computers smashed, the story's files wiped. The Chronicle pulled the piece, spooked by legal threats from Crane's allies. Marcus slammed his fist into the basement wall, dust crumbling, his hope gutted. Tanya, the one cop brave enough to stand with him, was gone. Her sacrifice for nothing. The city council meeting loomed, but without the story, without Tanya, Marcus's plan was ash. Crane's reach was a noose, tightening with every move Marcus made. The lieutenant hadn't just targeted him. He'd struck at another black life, punishing Tanya for defying the system that propped him up. Marcus thought of the barbecue, her hesitation as Crane's men swung batons, and now her bloodied face, a mirror of his own beating. The Sons of Liberty's shadow loomed larger, their hate woven into Crane's every act, from the coon at the motel to this kidnapping. Marcus's safe house felt like a tomb, the damp air choking him. He'd lost his badge, his name, his evidence, and now an ally, each blow harder than the last. Crane's racism wasn't just slurs or fists, it was a machine crushing anyone who dared expose it. Marcus clutched the USB drive, a copy he'd made, its data useless without a platform. Lena's voice echoed in his mind, begging him to stop. But stopping meant letting Crane win, letting Tanya's risk be for nothing. He paced the basement, the concrete cold under his boots, his cut palm throbbing. The council meeting was tomorrow. a chance slipping away. Marcus had faced racists, before climbed their walls to lead the FBI, but Crane's game was chess with lives, not pieces. Tanya's plea replayed, her eyes wide with fear, a sister in this fight now silenced. Marcus's jaw tightened, his resolve a blade honed by loss. He'd find a way to save her, to use the records, because giving up wasn't in him. Crane thought. A knife and a smashed office could end this, but Marcus Everett was still standing, a spark in the dark ready to ignite. Marcus Everett stood in the stifling gloom of an abandoned Atlanta warehouse, the air sour with oil and decay, his heart pounding as he clutched a fake USB drive, his only play to save Tanya Brooks from Lieutenant Victor Crane's knife. At 42, a fugitive stripped of his FBI badge, Marcus was a shadow, hunted for exposing Crane's supremacist-backed corruption, the coon from the motel fire still burning in his mind. Tanya's bloodied face in Crane's video, her pleas choked. By a gag haunted him, a black cop who'd risked everything to hand him bank records tying Crane to the Sons of Liberty. Guilt gnawed at Marcus. His leak to the press had sparked Crane's wrath, costing Tanya her freedom and Carla's story its life. The ransacked newsroom, the cancelled exposé, had left Marcus with nothing but the drive's copy and a city council meeting slipping away. He couldn't let Tanya die, not for his fight. Crane's message was clear. Bring the records or Tanya's blood would stain his hands. Marcus negotiated through a burner phone, his voice steady, offering to trade the drive for Tanya's life. Crane, his tone dripping venom, agreed to meet at a derelict warehouse off Fulton Industrial, a maze of rusted beams and broken glass. Marcus knew it was a trap, but Tanya's eyes wide with fear in the video drove him forward. He crafted a decoy drive, loaded with dummy files, banking on Crane's greed to buy time. Lena's voice echoed in his head, begging him to stay safe. For Jaden. But Marcus couldn't abandon Tanya, another black life caught in Crane's racist machine. He slipped into the warehouse at midnight, the moon hidden, his Glock tucked under a frayed jacket, the fake drive in his pocket. Crane waited in the center, a hulking silhouette under a flickering bulb. Tanya bound at his feet, her face bruised, one eye swollen shut. Two of Crane's cops flanked him, their guns glinting, smirks curling their lips. "Hand it over, Everett," Crane growled, his buzz cut catching the light, his voice thick with the same hate that fueled the barbecue raid. Marcus tossed the drive, praying the bluff held. Crane snatched it, nodding to a cop who cut Tanya's ropes. She stumbled to Marcus, her breath ragged, whispering, "You shouldn't have come." Marcus gripped her arm, guiding her toward the exit, his eyes locked on Crane, who plugged the drive into a laptop. For a moment it worked. Crane's face twisted with greed, thinking he'd won. Marcus's heart lifted, Tanya alive, their escape close. But Crane wasn't a fool. His eyes narrowed, the laptop screen flashing errors, the dummy files exposed. "You think I'm stupid?" Crane roared, slamming the laptop shut. Before Marcus could react, a click echoed, a timer hidden in the warehouse's shadows. Crane's men bolted, and Marcus's gut screamed danger. He yanked Tanya toward the door as the first explosion rocked the building, a fireball erupting from the back, heat searing their skin. Beams collapsed, sparks raining, the air choking with smoke. Marcus shoved Tanya through a side exit, his lungs burning, debris slicing his shoulder. They tumbled into the dirt outside, the warehouse a roaring inferno, flames licking the night sky. Marcus's ears rang, his vision blurred, but he pulled Tanya to her feet, staggering into an alley, as sirens wailed in the distance. They'd escaped, but Crane's trap wasn't done. By morning, doctored footage hit every news channel. Grainy clips showing Marcus planting a bomb in the warehouse, his face clear, Tanya's absence erased. Crane's voiceover claimed Marcus had bombed the site to evade justice, a terrorist attacking Atlanta's heart. The media swallowed it, pundits raging about the rogue black agent turned domestic threat. Protesters who'd once chanted for Crane's arrest now split, some calling Marcus a villain, their signs demanding his head. Atlanta's streets turned hostile, every passerby a potential snitch, every corner a trap. Tanya, bruised but alive, hid with Marcus in a new safe house, a crumbling apartment in Bankhead, her guilt matching his. "I got you into this," Marcus muttered, but Tanya shook her head, her voice fierce despite the pain. "Crane's the monster, not you." The words didn't erase the weight. Marcus's plan to expose Crane at the council meeting was dead, the records useless without Carla's platform. Crane had turned his sacrifice into a noose, painting him as a bomber, a lie that cut deeper than the traitor graffiti or the motel slur. The warehouse blast wasn't just an attack, it was a message. Crane's racism would burn everything Marcus touched. His shoulder throbbed, blood soaking his shirt, but his mind stayed sharp. Lena and Jaden were still out there, safe but fragile, their lives tied to his fight. Tanya's rescue was a flicker of hope, but Crane's footage had lit a new fire, one that could consume Atlanta. Marcus had faced racists in boardrooms and precincts, climbed to FBI director against their hate, but Crane's game was a hydra, each head uglier than the last. The safe house's walls closed in, the air stale, Tanya's breathing uneven beside him. Marcus's fingers traced the Glock, his only shield now. He'd saved Tanya, but at what cost? Crane's empire was still standing, his lies louder than ever. Marcus wasn't done, not while his heart beat, not while Crane's machine crushed black lives. The fight was bleeding him dry, but surrender wasn't an option. If you're gutted by Crane's vicious trap, comment 1 to demand justice for. Marcus and Tanya smash like to keep this fire burning, and subscribe to see their fight roar on. What would Crane do next to bury Marcus's truth forever? Marcus Everett hunched over a rickety table in a crumbling Bankhead apartment, the air thick with mildew and tension, his shoulders still raw from the warehouse explosion that nearly killed him and Tanya Brooks. At 42, a fugitive branded a terrorist, Marcus was a hunted man, the coon from the motel fire and Crane's doctored footage searing his name across Atlanta's news feeds. Tanya, bruised but fierce, sat across from him, her swollen eye a reminder of Crane's kidnapping, her bank records their last hope to expose Lieutenant Victor Crane's ties to the Sons of Liberty. The safe house, a damp hole with peeling wallpaper, was their sanctuary, but Marcus knew Crane's claws could rip through any wall. His family, Lena and Jaden, were safe in a distant safe house, their absence a wound deeper than the cuts on his skin. The council meeting plan was dead. Carla's newsroom gutted, and Marcus's fight hung by a thread. Then a lifeline came. Reggie Coleman, a 50-year-old ex-FBI colleague with a gravelly laugh and a limp from a bust gone wrong, reached out. Reggie, who'd mentored Marcus through the agency's racist gauntlet, swore to clear his name. "I got you, brother," Reggie said over a secure line, his voice a balm after the warehouse's flames. Marcus, wary but desperate, let Reggie into the safe house, the older man's hug smelling of cigar smoke and loyalty. Reggie had a plan. A hacker named Zion, a 25-year-old prodigy with dreadlocks and a grudge against dirty cops, could trace Crane's supremacist funds to a state senator, a big fish who could sink the lieutenant's empire. Marcus's pulse quickened. Her senator's fall could spark a federal probe, exposing the Sons of Liberty and Crane's whole machine. Reggie set up a meet at a derelict strip mall, where Zion, hunched over a laptop in a gutted vape shop, cracked encrypted accounts like eggs. The screen glowed with proof. Millions funneled from militia deals to Senator Harlan Voss, a silver-haired politician whose tough-on-crime speeches masked a supremacist agenda. Marcus's chest tightened, victory close enough to taste. He could see Crane's smirk fading, the traitor graffiti erased, Lena's smile returning. Zion burned the data onto a drive, promising to dig deeper. Marcus clasped Reggie's shoulder, gratitude swelling for the man who'd stood by him when the FBI turned its back. But trust was a blade, and Reggie had sharpened it for Crane. The lieutenant, his buzz cut glinting in a precinct war room, had bought Reggie's loyalty years ago, a bribe tucked into a Cayman account. Reggie, smiling as he hugged Marcus, had slipped a GPS tracker into Marcus's duffel, a tiny betrayal that hummed with Crane's malice. As Marcus and Tanya returned to the safe house, planning to leak Zion's data, tires screeched outside. Windows shattered, tear gas canisters hissing as Crane's SWAT team stormed in, their boots thudding like war drums. "Fugitive sighted," a cop bellowed, lies dripping from his radio. Marcus grabbed Tanya, diving for the kitchen, his Glock drawn, eyes stinging from gas. Bullets tore through drywall, splintering the table where Zion's drive lay. Marcus fired back, clipping a cop's vest, but the team was a swarm, their gear black as death. Tanya coughed, choking, as Marcus kicked open a back door, dragging her into a garbage-strewn alley. They sprinted, gas burning their lungs, the safe house a haze of chaos. Marcus's heart sank, not for the raid, but for Reggie's absence. The tracker's beep, faint in his bag, told the truth. Reggie had sold him out, his mentorship a mask for Crane's gold. Marcus tossed the tracker, crushing it under his boot, but the damage was done. By dawn, news broke. Zion, the hacker, was dead. His body found in the strip mall, a staged overdose with needle marks no addict would leave. The drive was gone, Zion's data erased, his death a warning to anyone who crossed Crane. Marcus and Tanya hid in a storm drain, the concrete cold, their breaths ragged. Crane's voice crackled over a stolen police radio, taunting, "You trust too easily, Everett." The words cut deeper than the gas, Reggie's betrayal a blade in Marcus's back. The Senator's trail, their last shot, was ash, Zion's blood, on Marcus's hands. Crane's racism wasn't just slurs or bombs. It was a system, buying allies, killing hope, crushing black lives like Tanya's, Zion's, Marcus's. The raid wasn't random. It was surgical, Crane's machine slicing away Marcus's support. He thought of Lena's last call, Jaden's silence, the traitor on his garage. Reggie's face, once a brother's, now mocked him, a pawn in Crane's game. The safe house was gone, Tanya's bruises darkening, their options shrinking. Marcus's Glock felt heavy, his shoulder throbbing, but his mind was a furnace. He'd climbed to FBI director, faced racists in every room, but Crane's betrayal was a new beast, turning friends into enemies. Zion's death wasn't just a loss. It was a signal. Crane would kill anyone to keep his empire. Marcus gripped Tanya's hand, her eyes fierce despite the pain. They were alive, but for how long? Crane's machine was a hydra, Reggie just one head. Marcus had trusted, and it cost him everything. But he wasn't done. The Senator's name burned in his memory, a spark in the dark. Crane thought betrayal could break him, but Marcus Everett was forged in fire, and this war wasn't over. Marcus Everett crouched in the damp chill of a storm drain, the concrete biting his knees, his breath ragged as Tanya Brooks shivered beside him, her bruises stark under the faint glow of a cracked phone screen. At 42, Marcus was a fugitive, his FBI badge gone, his name a curse on Atlanta's airwaves, Reggie's betrayal a fresh wound that bled deeper than the motel fire or Crane's coon slur. The safe house raid, Reggie's tracker, Zion's murder, all orchestrated by Lieutenant Victor Crane, had stripped Marcus to his core, leaving him with nothing but Tanya's grit and the fading hope of exposing Crane's Sons of Liberty ties. Senator Voss's name, the supremacist money trail, was a ghost now, Zion's data ashes in a strip mall. Marcus's heart pounded, not for himself, but for Lena and Jaden, hidden in a safe house 200 miles away, their safety his only anchor. But Crane's machine never slept. As dawn broke, the phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number, found them say goodbye. Attached was a photo of Lena, unconscious, blood trickling from her temple, and Jaden gone. Marcus's vision blurred, rage and terror colliding, the air in the drain turning to ice. Crane had found the safe house, his goons breaching what Marcus thought was untouchable. Tanya's hand gripped his, her voice steady despite her pain. "We get them back." Marcus nodded, his mind a blade cutting through panic. He traced the photo's metadata, a faint GPS ping pointing to a rural compound 60 miles north, a Sons of Liberty stronghold. Crane's racism, from the barbecue raid to Tanya's kidnapping, now aimed at Marcus's blood, a strike meant to break him forever. He and Tanya stole a rusted pickup, speeding through backroads, the truck's engine groaning under the weight of their mission. Marcus's shoulder throbbed, his palms cut, oozing, but pain was fuel. The compound loomed at dusk, a fortified sprawl of barbed wire and floodlights, militia flags flapping like vultures' wings. Marcus scouted from a ridge, spotting armed Guards, their rifles glinting, and a cinder-block bunker where Jayden was likely held. Tanya, her eyes still swollen, took lookout, her stolen police radio crackling with Crane's orders. Marcus slipped through the shadows, cutting a hole in the fence, his Glock heavy in his hand. The compound reeked of diesel and hate, graffiti on the walls echoing the coon from the motel, a reminder of Crane's venom. He moved like a ghost, disabling a guard with a chokehold, his breath silent despite the fire in his chest. Inside, the bunker. Jayden sat tied to a chair, 16, his face bruised, eyes wide with fear but defiance. Marcus cut the ropes, whispering, "I'm here, son," his voice cracking. Jayden clung to him, trembling, and for a moment Marcus felt whole. They crept toward the exit, Tanya's signal clear. He thought they'd won, thought Crane's grip had slipped, but Crane played chess, not checkers. As Marcus and Jayden reached the fence, floodlights blazed, and Crane's men, not militia but elite cops, ambushed them. Bullets tore through the night, one grazing Marcus's leg, blood soaking his jeans. He fired back, shielding Jayden, his shots wild but forcing a gap. Tanya's truck screeched up, and Marcus shoved Jayden inside, diving in as she floored it. The compound faded, but the bullet in Marcus's leg burned, a red-hot reminder of Crane's reach. They ditched the truck in a forest, hiding in a ditch, Jayden's breath hitching. Marcus checked the safe house via a burner. Lena was alive, beaten, but stable, rescued by Ty, the ex-Marine guard. Relief crashed, but Jayden's voice cut through, sharp with pain. "This is your fault, Dad. You brought this." The words were a knife, twisting deeper than the bullet. Jayden's trauma, Lena's blood, were Crane's trophies. His racism, a blade carving Marcus's family apart. The compound wasn't just a kidnapping. It was a spectacle, Crane's way of showing no black man could defy him. Marcus's leg throbbed, his vision swimming. But Jayden's accusation hurt worse, echoing the traitor graffiti, the media's lies. Tanya bandaged his wound, her silence heavy, knowing Crane's machine thrived on breaking bonds. Marcus had saved Jayden, but at what cost? Lena's beating, Jayden's hate were new scars, deeper than the motel fire or Reggie's betrayal. Crane's goons hadn't just attacked, they'd weaponized Marcus's love, turning his son against him. The ditch's mud clung to Marcus's boots, the night pressing in. He'd climbed to FBI director, faced racists in every shadow, but Crane's war was personal, a vendetta that spared nothing. Senator Voss's trail was cold, Tanya's records useless without Zion. Marcus's family was fractured, his body failing, but his will was iron. Crane thought pain could crush him, thought Jayden's words could end him. But Marcus Everett was a spark, and this fight was far from over. If you're heartbroken by Crane's attack on Marcus's family, comment 1 to stand against this hate, hit like to keep their fight alive, and subscribe to see justice rise. Could Marcus rebuild his son's trust before Crane struck again? Marcus Everett limped through a pine forest north of Atlanta, his leg pulsing with pain from the bullet that grazed him during Jayden's rescue. The mud from the ditch still caked on his boots as Tanya Brooks kept watch, her bruised face set with grim resolve. At 42, Marcus was a fugitive, his FBI badge a memory, his name a curse after Crane's lies branded him a terrorist, the coon from the motel fire, and Jayden's accusing words cutting deeper than any wound. Lena was safe, recovering from her beating, but Jayden's blame, "This is your fault," echoed louder than the compound's gunfire, a fracture in Marcus's heart. Crane's machine, fueled by the Sons of Liberty, had torn his family apart. From the barbecue raid to Tanya's kidnapping, each blow a racist dagger meant to break him. But Marcus wasn't done. Senator Harlan Voss's name, the supremacist, money trail Zion died for, burned in his memory, a weapon he could still wield. Hiding in a hunter's shack, the air sharp with sap and rust, Marcus used a stolen laptop to encrypt Voss's financial records, salvaged from Tanya's drive before Reggie's betrayal. He sent them to a national outlet, the Washington Herald. Bypassing Atlanta's cowed press, the story hit like a bomb. Senator Voss tied to white supremacist cash, detailing millions funneled through Crane's shell companies for militia arms. Protests erupted, not just in Atlanta but D.C., Chicago, L.A., crowds chanting Voss's name, their signs a sea of rage. By noon, Voss, his silver hair disheveled, resigned in a tearful press conference, claiming he was misled, but fooling no one. Crane's allies, dirty cops and fixer lawyers scattered, their phone lines silent as the scandal spread. Marcus, watching the news on a grainy stream, felt a surge of triumph, his bloodied leg forgotten. The senator's fall was a crack in Crane's empire, proof Marcus could still fight. He pictured Lena's pride, Jaden's scowl softening, the traitor graffiti fading under this blow. Tanya nodded, her swollen eye glinting with hope, whispering, "We got him." But Lieutenant Victor Crane, pacing a precinct bunker, his buzz cut slick with sweat, wasn't a man who folded. Voss's resignation was a bruise, not a knockout, and Crane's malice burned hotter than ever. He crafted a new lie, a masterpiece, of cruelty, staging Voss's suicide in a penthouse suite. The senator's body slumped over a forged note blaming Marcus for blackmail. A silenced pistol, wiped clean, lay beside Voss, but the scene was Crane's art. Every detail, screaming murder. Leaked photos hit the internet, doctored texts showing Marcus threatening Voss, painting him as a rogue black agent turned assassin. The media, hungry for blood, ran wild, anchors spitting venom. Everett's vendetta claims a senator. The racial subtext was a sledgehammer. Marcus's defiance twisted into a stereotype of violent chaos. Crane's coup de grace came at dusk. Marcus and Tanya, holed up in a new hideout, a condemned trailer park, heard a hum overhead, too steady for a plane. Drones, 3 of them military-grade, swooped low, their payloads armed by Crane's Sons of Liberty contacts. The first bomb detonated, leveling the trailer, flames roaring as Marcus dove into a ditch, Tanya scrambling beside him. Shrapnel sliced his arm, blood mixing with dirt, the air thick with smoke and diesel. The second drone strafed, bullets chewing the ground, missing Marcus's head by inches. He crawled, coughing, his Glock useless against machines. The third drone circled, its red eye blinking, but Tanya's wild shot cracked its rotor, sending it crashing. They ran, the park a blazing ruin, the attack a high-tech lynching meant to silence Marcus forever. By morning, the FBI, swayed by Crane's lies, issued a kill order, no trial, no questions. Marcus's face plastered on every screen as a cop killer, a senator slayer. Crane's voice hit the airwaves, a radio interview dripping with fake grief. No black man outsmarts me. The slur wasn't spoken, but its weight hung in every syllable, a taunt that echoed the barbecue raid, the motel fire, Jaden's rescue. Marcus, hiding in a culvert, his arm bleeding, leg throbbing, felt the world close in. The protests he'd sparked were drowned by fear, half the country baying for his blood, the other half unsure. Tanya's breath was ragged, her faith shaken but unbroken. Marcus's victory, Voss's fall, had lit a fire, but Crane's retaliation was a furnace, burning his life to ash. The drones weren't just weapons, they were a message. Crane's racism could reach anywhere, kill anyone. Marcus thought of Lena's last text, "Come home," and Jaden's silence, a wound no bandage could fix. He'd climbed to FBI director, faced racists in every hall, but Crane's machine was a beast, turning wins into traps. The kill order was a death sentence, the drones a promise of no mercy. Marcus's body screamed, his arms slick with blood. But his mind was a blade sharpening. He'd exposed Voss, shaken Crane's allies, and he'd do it again. Tanya's eyes met his, a silent vow to keep fighting. Crane thought drones could end him, thought lies could bury him. But Marcus Everett was a spark, and this war was his to win. He whispered, "We're not done," his voice steel, ready to strike. Marcus Everett limped through Atlanta's underbelly, his legs seeping blood from the compound ambush, his arm raw from the drone strike's shrapnel, the weight of Jaden's blame and Crane's kill order crushing his chest. At 42, a fugitive, branded a senator's killer, Marcus was a ghost. The coon slur and Voss's staged suicide fueling Lieutenant Victor Crane's racist machine. Tanya Brooks, her bruises fading but spirit unbroken, stayed close. Their culvert hideout a fleeting shelter after the trailer park's flames. Lena's recovery, Jaden's silence, drove Marcus forward, his defiance a fire no drone could snuff. Senator Voss's resignation, sparked by Marcus's leak, had shaken Crane's empire, but the lieutenant's retaliation, drones and lies, had turned the city into a noose. Marcus knew he couldn't fight alone. He slipped into a West End church basement, a secret town hall organized by Miss Ruby, the diner matriarch who'd swung her cane at Crane's cops during the barbecue raid. The room buzzed, 50 black faces, young and old, their eyes a mix of fear and fury. Marcus stood, voice steady, recounting Crane's crimes, the frame-ups, Tanya's kidnapping, Zion's murder, Lena's beating, Jaden's capture. He laid bare the Sons of Liberty's cache, Voss's fall, Crane's drones, his words a spark in the dark. The crowd roared, fists raised, their chants spilling onto the streets. By dawn, protests clogged Atlanta, from 5 Points to Sweet Auburn, signs reading "Stop Crane" and "Justice for Everett," swaying in the humid air. Marcus, hidden in a barbershop's back room, felt hope flicker, the community's rage a shield against Crane's hate. Then a new ally emerged. Sarah Nguyen, a 35-year-old FBI agent with a buzz cut and a conscience, contacted Tanya through a dead drop. Sarah, disillusioned by the agency's rush to brand Marcus a killer, had dug into classified files, uncovering Crane's supremacist network spanning Georgia's police, courts, even the governor's office. She met Marcus in a junkyard, slipping him a flash drive under piles of rusted fenders, her voice low. "This name's everyone. Get it out." The files were a goldmine, emails, wiretaps, photos of Crane shaking hands with militia leaders, proof. His machine wasn't just Atlanta's, but the state's. Marcus's pulse raced. A live broadcast, hijacking a news channel, could expose it all, end Crane's reign. He planned to hit a local station, WATL, with the files, his eyes burning with purpose. Sarah vowed to guard the junkyard, her Glock drawn, while Tanya scouted the station. Marcus felt victory near, the protests a wave he could ride, Sarah's files a sword to cut Crane down. He pictured Lena's smile, Jaden's trust rebuilt, the traitor graffiti erased. But Crane, pacing a precinct war room, his buzz cut glinting under fluorescent lights, smelled the trap. His mole, a protest organizer paid off years ago, fed him Marcus's plan. Crane didn't strike directly. He played dirty, sending undercover. Cops into the protests, not in uniforms, but hoodies, their faces masked. They hurled bottles, smashed windows, turned peaceful chants into chaos. News cameras swarmed, framing black protesters as rioters, their signs trampled, their voices drowned by sirens. Crane's men lit fires, blaming Everett's mob, the racial dog whistle deafening. Marcus, prepping in the barbershop, saw the news, his stomach plummeting. The protests, his lifeline, were now a weapon against him. Sarah's radio crackled, her voice urgent. "They're coming." Before Marcus could warn her, a sniper's bullet tore through the junkyard, striking Sarah's chest. She fell, blood pooling, the flash drive slipping from her hand. Crane's cops stormed in, torching the files, flames eating the truth. Marcus, miles away, felt the loss like a punch. Sarah's sacrifice, another black ally crushed by Crane's hate. The riots spread, police batons cracking skulls, tear gas choking the air. Marcus ran, Tanya at his side, through alleys thick with smoke, protesters scattering as Crane's men hunted. The broadcast plan was dead, the files ash, Sarah's blood on Marcus's hands. He ducked into a narrow alley, cops closing in, their radios barking his name. Tanya's breath was ragged, her faith fraying. Marcus's leg buckled, his arm bleeding, the kill order a shadow over him. Crane's riot wasn't just chaos, it was a noose, tightening around Marcus's neck, painting black resistance as violence, justifying his erasure. The alley's walls loomed, graffiti echoing the coon from the motel, a reminder of Crane's venom. Marcus thought of Lena's last call, Jaden's blame, Reggie's betrayal, Zion's body, Sarah's fall. He'd rallied a city, found proof, but Crane's machine turned hope into havoc. The protests were his spark, but Crane's fire burned hotter, fed by racism that saw black lives as threats. Marcus's Glock was empty, his body failing, but his mind was steel. Sarah's death wasn't the end. It was a call to fight harder. A stranger's hand, rough and urgent, yanked him from the alley, a shadow offering escape. Marcus stumbled, alive but cornered, Crane's sirens closing in. He'd faced racists in every room, climbed to FBI director, but Crane's war was a beast, devouring allies, twisting truth. The stranger's face was hidden, but their grip was firm. Marcus wasn't alone, not yet. Crane thought riots could bury him, but Marcus Everett was a spark, and this fight was still alive. Marcus Everett staggered through a back alley, his leg oozing blood from the compound ambush, his arm raw from the drone strike, the echo of Sarah's death and Crane's riot tightening the noose around his neck. At 42, a fugitive branded a senator's killer, Marcus was a spark in a storm, saved from the alley's jaws by a stranger, a hacktivist named Quinn, a wiry 28-year-old with a shaved head and a laptop that could crack empires. Tanya Brooks, her bruises a map of Crane's hate, limped beside him, their breath ragged after the protest-turned-riot crushed their hopes. Lieutenant Victor Crane's machine, fueled by the Sons of Liberty, had burned Sarah's files, framed Marcus for Voss's suicide, and turned Atlanta's streets into a hunting ground, the coon slur from the motel fire a ghost in every shadow. Lena's recovery, Jaden's blame, drove Marcus to keep fighting, his defiance a fire no kill order could douse. Quinn, a rogue coder who'd watched Marcus's town hall stream, pulled them to a safe house, a loft above a shuttered record store, its walls vibrating with distant sirens. The hacktivist salvaged fragments of Sarah's files from a cloud backup, piecing together emails and photos of Crane's supremacist network, militia deals, dirty cops, a governor's aide on the take. Marcus's pulse surged, a live broadcast. Hijacking Wattel's signal could blast the truth to millions, end Crane's reign. Quinn's fingers danced over keys, rerouting the station's feed, while Tanya scouted the building, her stolen radio crackling with Crane's orders. Marcus, his leg bandaged, arm throbbing, felt victory close. The protest still smoldering outside, a chance to reignite. He pictured Lena's pride, Jaden's trust rebuilt, the traitor graffiti erased. At midnight they slipped into New Wattle's studio, a glass fortress in Midtown, its security offline thanks to Quinn's code. Marcus stood before a camera, heart pounding, as Quinn patched the feed to every screen in Atlanta. He spoke, voice steady, laying bare Crane's crimes, the barbecue raid, Tanya's kidnapping, Zion's murder, Voss's staged death, the drones, the riot. Photos flashed, Crane shaking hands with militia leaders, emails naming his network. Viewers froze, phones buzzing, social media exploding with Freude Crane exposed. Protesters regrouped, their chants echoing outside. Marcus felt the tide turn, Crane's empire cracking, his lies drowning in truth. Tanya's eyes gleamed, Quinn's grin wide, the broadcast a blade in Crane's heart. Half the city called Marcus a hero, the other half stunned, their screens alight with proof. For a moment Marcus believed he'd won, the fire he'd lit burning Crane to ash. But Crane, his buzz cut slick with sweat in a precinct bunker, wasn't a man who watched his throne crumble. His mole, a Wattle tech bribed years ago, tipped him off. Crane didn't send cops. He unleashed mercenaries, ex-military hired by the Sons of Liberty, their black gear silent as death. They stormed the station, cutting the feed mid-sentence, glass, shattering as flashbangs erupted. Marcus dove behind a console, Tanya firing her stolen Glock, Quinn scrambling to reboot the signal. The mercenaries, faces masked, moved like wolves, their rifles spitting rounds. Marcus returned fire, his Glock's recoil jarring his wounded arm, one shot grazing a merc's leg. Tanya winged another, but they were outnumbered, the studio a war zone of sparks and smoke. Quinn, blood trickling from a cut brow, got the feed. Back online, Marcus's voice roaring again, naming Crane's paymasters. The mercenaries closed in, their boots crunching glass. Marcus spotted Crane himself, a hulking shadow in the chaos, his smirk visible even through smoke. "You're done, Everett," Crane shouted, raising a pistol. Marcus fired first, the bullet tearing through Crane's shoulder, blood spraying as the lieutenant staggered, roaring, "I'll bury you!" Crane fled, mercenaries covering him, but the damage was done. Marcus's broadcast resumed, the truth unstoppable, viewers glued to their screens. But the fight took its toll. A mercenary's bullet caught Marcus in the shoulder, pain exploding, blood pooling on the studio floor. He stumbled, vision blurring, Tanya dragging him behind a desk. Quinn, still streaming, shouted, "Keep talking." Marcus tried, his voice weak, naming the governor's aide as sirens wailed outside. The mercenaries retreated. Their mission failed, but Marcus's body gave out, his shoulder a furnace, his leg numb. He collapsed, blood slick under him, Tanya's hands pressing his wound, her voice distant. "Stay with me." The broadcast looped, Crane's crimes on repeat, Atlanta waking to the truth. But Marcus's world faded, the studio's lights dimming. His thoughts on Lena's last call, Jaden's blame, Sarah's sacrifice. Crane's racism, from the barbecue to this firefight, was a machine, targeting black lives, silencing defiance. The mercenaries weren't just hired guns. They were Crane's fist, crushing Marcus's spark. He'd exposed the network, wounded Crane, but at what cost? His shoulder bled, his breath shallow, the sirens closer. Tanya's grip tightened, Quinn's laptop glowing, the broadcast still alive. Marcus had faced racists in every hall, climbed to FBI director, but Crane's war was a beast, chewing through his body, his hope. The studio floor was cold, his blood warm, but his will was iron. Crane was bleeding too, his empire exposed, but he'd vowed revenge. Marcus's eyes fluttered. The fight not over, his spark flickering but not gone. He'd lit a fire and Atlanta was burning. Marcus Everett woke to the sterile beep of a hospital monitor, his shoulder a throbbing knot of pain from the mercenary's bullet, his leg stiff from the compound ambush, the weight of Atlanta's fire still pressing on his chest. At 42, a fugitive no more, Marcus lay handcuffed to a bed, the broadcast's truth echoing across the city, but Lieutenant Victor Crane's shadow loomed, unyielding. The studio firefight, Tanya's grip, Quinn's laptop, had burned Crane's supremacist network into the nation's conscience, splitting America. Half saw Marcus as a hero, half a villain, the coon slur and Voss's staged suicide still poisoning the air. Lena's recovery, Jaden's blame, Sarah's death, Zion's murder, Tanya's bruises, Reggie's betrayal, all scars of Crane's racist machine, from the barbecue raid to the drone strike, each blow aimed at crushing black defiance. Marcus's eyes adjusted to the hospital's glare, his wrists chafing under cuffs, a federal charge of terrorism pinning him down. Crane, shoulder bandaged but free, had spun a final lie, testifying that Marcus faked the broadcast, a rogue black agent sowing chaos. The media, split but hungry, ran Crane's tale, pundits sneering. Everett's a fraud, tearing down law enforcement. The racial venom was thick, echoing the traitor graffiti, the motel fire, the riot's chaos. Outside, Lena and Jaden led protests, their signs a sea of free Marcus, their voices hoarse but unbroken. Marcus, weak but unbowed, knew Crane's empire was cracked, the broadcast naming his Sons of Liberty paymasters, but the lieutenant's last play was a guillotine. The trial came fast, a federal courthouse packed with reporters, the air electric with tension. Marcus, in a grey suit, limped to the stand, his shoulder screaming, his gaze locked on Crane, who sat smug, his buzz cut gleaming under courtroom lights. The judge, a stern woman with grey streaks, demanded Marcus's defense. Crane's lawyer, a slick fixer, paraded evidence, doctored texts, staged photos, claiming Marcus orchestrated the studio attack to frame honest cops. Crane took the stand, his voice steady, swearing Marcus was a liar, a terrorist, his words a blade, meant to bury a black man who dared rise too high. The gallery murmured, some nodding, others glaring, the nation watching on live feeds. Marcus felt the system's weight, the same machine that framed him for Voss's death, burned Zion's data, killed Sarah. His heart pounded, not for fear, but for Lena's chance outside, Jaden's silent pain, Tanya's sacrifice. He'd climbed to FBI director, faced racists in every room, but Crane's lie was a masterstroke, twisting Marcus's truth into treason. Then Marcus played his ace. From a hidden pocket, sewn into his suit by Quinn before the broadcast, he pulled a microchip, a recording from the studio fight. His lawyer, a pro bono firebrand named Elena Cruz, plugged it into the court's audio system. Crane's voice filled the room, raw from the firefight. "I run this state, Everett. The Suns keep it pure and you'll die for nothing." Gasps erupted, Crane's face paling, his smirk gone. The recording rolled, detailing his militia deals, the governor's aid, the riot setup, every word a nail in his coffin. Marcus stood, voice calm, recounting the barbecue, Tanya's kidnapping, the drones, his family's pain, tying Crane's confession to the broadcast's proof. The judge's gavel slammed, ordering Crane's arrest, her voice icy. Life without parole. Handcuffs snapped on Crane's wrists, his eyes wild, spitting slurs as marshals dragged him away, the gallery erupting in cheers and jeers. Marcus was cleared, the terrorism charge dropped, his name restored. Reporters swarmed, protesters roared, Lena's tears meeting his as Jaden hugged him, his scowl softened but not gone. Atlanta exhaled, Crane's empire shattered, his lieutenants rounded up, the Sons of Liberty's cash frozen. But victory was bitter. In a quiet FBI office, Marcus learned the truth. Crane's network wasn't dead. Classified intercepts, slipped to him by a loyal agent, showed militia cells regrouping, their leaders vowing revenge from shadows. Crane's venom still pulsing. The system, cracked but not broken, would hunt again. Its racism, a hydra with endless heads. Marcus, his shoulder scarred, his leg limping, faced a choice. The FBI offered his badge back, but he refused. At 42, he'd fought their war, bled for their justice, but the machine that let Crane thrive wasn't his to fix from within. He stepped down as director, a press conference in the rain, his voice steady. "I'll fight as a civilian. For my family, for us all." Lena squeezed his hand. Jaden nodded, a spark of pride in his eyes. Marcus walked away, no badge, no gun, but free, his spark now aflame. Crane's cell couldn't hold the network's hate, its whispers a threat, to every black life Marcus loved. The courthouse faded, Atlanta's skyline glowing, but the fire wasn't out. Marcus had faced racists in every hall, climbed their walls, but this war was eternal. Crane was gone, but his shadow lingered, a machine that saw black defiance as a crime. Marcus's suit was pressed, his scars hidden, but his will was iron. He'd lit a fire and it would burn on. Justice in the fire delivers a searing lesson. Systemic racism is a relentless machine, but individual courage can spark change. Marcus Everett's battle against Lieutenant Victor Crane reveals how racist structures corrupt police, biased. Media supremacist networks thrive on power and lies, targeting black lives with brutal precision. From the barbecue raid to the drone strike, Crane's racist vendetta aimed to crush Marcus's spirit, exploiting stereotypes to frame him as a criminal, terrorist, and traitor. Yet Marcus's resilience, rooted in love for Lena and Jaden, shows that defiance can outlast hate. His climb to FBI director, only to step down, underscores that true justice often demands personal sacrifice, not institutional titles. The story teaches that allies like Tanya and Sarah are vital, but betrayal, like Reggie's, is a constant risk in a system that rewards complicity. Crane's downfall, sparked by Marcus's broadcast, proves truth can fracture even the strongest. Racist empires, but the lingering Sons of Liberty network warns that victory is never final. For every black individual facing slurs, frame-ups, or violence, Marcus's spark is a call to stand firm, to fight smarter, to build community. The lesson isn't just survival, it's about igniting fires that burn through injustice no matter the cost. What's your take on Marcus's fight? Comment below, hit like if you stand against racist systems, subscribe for more stories of resilience, and share to spread this truth. Thank you for joining this journey. Here's to courage that lights the way.